purpose of what we're doing here today is to kind of give you some things to think about. So I'm going to walk through, do a couple slides, talk a little bit about hybrid cloud, what you can do, private cloud, public cloud, compare and contrast. And then I'm going to jump into our lab where we have built this full stack environment. And what I want you to get out of this is a couple of things. Mainly, I want you to start thinking about use cases. Because I go and talk to organizations all over North, South Carolina, and Southern Virginia around things like true public-private hybrid clouds, automation, orchestration, self-service provisioning, things like that. And often people bring me in without any real thought into what they want to get out of a project like that. So what I'm going to walk you through is a couple of use cases that we've come up with, some of those using those first kind of low-hanging fruit things. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stack. I'm going to talk about what we built. And then I want you to think about how this would be applicable to you. You may be an agency where you can't do a hybrid cloud. You can't move things outside your walls. And that's fine. The beauty of this is all these benefits you can take advantage of within your data center walls. If you want to move some things out, fantastic. What you'll see is we can give you one interface to do that with. But I just want your gears to start turning. I want you to start thinking about it. What could you do? How could you speed things up? How could you automate things? How could you standardize your processes? That's what I want you to look at out of this. The rest of the technology is really cool. Again, I'll talk about the stack and what we built, but I want you to start thinking about how you can implement something like this. So I've only got a couple of slides. I'm trying to keep those fairly brief. But really what we're finding as I talk to more and more people is that almost every project within an organization, government, commercial, large enterprise, doesn't matter, almost always has an IT component these days. It can be as simple as just supporting some off-the-shelf applications. It could be custom development. It could be integration into an external system, supplier, vendor, whatever. But IT is almost always getting pulled into those types of projects. And all these projects have different requirements. And what you spec out on day one isn't always the case. Things move around. Projects go from, I can't tell you how many projects we do that start out as a pilot or proof of concept, and a month later they're trying to roll that same exact thing into production. Hey, it's great that it worked really well and you want to move it into production, but were you thinking about that when you deployed it, that this may eventually go straight to production without a reimplementation, without a rescoping, without a resizing? So often these things shift around and last a lot longer than you would expect. So the idea is, how do you support this? Let me jump. The way you support these things is moving to an IT as a service model. And what that really means is being there and being responsive to what the organization needs. Past history, before I was at Varrow, I've been at Varrow 6.5 years. Before I was at Varrow, for 2 years I was an enterprise architect at one of the large investment banks in Charlotte. And before that I was in the railroad industry, working for a company up near Raleigh. And even in the rail industry, they were moving very quickly toward more and more technology. We were doing a lot more tracking, tracing, waybills, all this stuff through the IT side of the house. Things that used to be done with off-the-shelf applications, we were then bringing in and hiring a lot of development staff to do it. And we had to spin up resources very quickly. We had to be very responsive. And if you look at the way things work, in a lot of cases, I'm going to throw out the old 80-20 or 70-30 number, whichever number you want to believe, right? 70%, 80% of budget goes toward keeping the lights on. That number varies depending on organization, who you believe, what partner's doing this week, but it's a significant amount. What IT as a service does is it starts to automate that. It starts to give a little bit more control of day-to-day operations, say application owners, takes out the IT staff from a lot of the mundane, everyday task type things. And when you free those people up, they can then start spending their time on actually getting things done. And I have yet to find an organization that has an IT department that has more people than they have work. It's just not the case. Everywhere people are behind. We talk. The whole reason that Varrow we do services isn't because the people our customers, they're not smart enough to do it. They can't get the knowledge to do it. It's they don't have the time to do it. Often we do things for them that they can have the time to do. They just don't have the time to do it. So it's not, it's just they're getting wrapped up around these, day-to-day tasks that we can simplify. And so we start talking about things like cloud. Cloud is a hugely overused term. I almost hate to use it, but it does mean something. And when we talk about cloud, what I want you to think about is not, I got a data center and I run VMware, Hyper-V, virtualization, that's a cloud. A cloud is, it's compute, it's network, it's storage, it's scalable, it's dynamic. You can reassign it as you need it. I can move workloads from here to here. It's automated. It's much more than just traditional legacy IT. Private cloud is very simple. It's what you manage in your data center. This is very, very attractive to most people because they know it, they trust it. If it goes down, the guy, they know who to go yell at. And a lot of times it's compliance and regulatory reasons they have to keep things there. You've got public cloud offerings, which are usually fairly simple, can be low cost. I put disclaimers around a lot of things because they're not always low cost, and they're fairly flexible. You want to spin something up on the West Coast, the East Coast. You want to move a platform from Java or .NET, you can find a provider for these things. But what we're starting to discover is that people really want to merge those two and keep some things in-house and some things outside. And outside may be simple workloads that they ship up. It may be, Office 365, software as a service. We do Office 365. We saw there was no advantage to running our own email systems in-house. It can be kind of a combination of those things. So it's not an either or. You don't have to, I've seen people just go, okay, we're doing cloud first. That means everything gets deployed to Amazon. And if you don't want to do that, you have to justify it. No, I don't think that's the right way to go. I think the right way to go is look at what you have, look at where you want to be, what's the most cost-effective solution. The hard part is, how do you know what the most cost-effective solution is? And that's what I want to show you kind of as we go through the demo in a minute. I want to start putting numbers on things instead of going, well, Amazon charges me X amount for a medium instance, and back of the envelope math says this UCS server and this VNX array and this costs this, and they're roughly the same. We can walk you through the process of figuring that out. I have one slide that I really want to get to. Here it is. So one thing I want to show before we get into kind of the demo is figuring out where things need to be. And I love this example. One of the guys I used to work for, still a good friend of mine, Tom, is a pizza fanatic. So we kind of built this around that, and I think it's a great way for someone who's never kind of gone through the traditional IT, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service kind of comparison to think about what you get. Most of my customers I've had over the last 7 years are far left. Every time they do a data center refresh, we come in, we scope it, we size it, we figure out what they need, we configure it, we come up with a full end-to-end, project. New storage, new compute, new everything, and forklift upgrade. And it works great. You get exactly the pizza you want, no doubt about it. But is it the best use of the time? Do you want to do that every time you want to do this? Probably not. So the first step most people take is one hop to the right, which is infrastructure as a service. It's very simple. Do you care what your compute platform is? As long as it meets your needs and your requirements, probably not, right? Storage, network, a lot of these things are the same thing. Do they meet your requirements? Do they do it in a cost-effective manner? Is it the right solution? But really, from the application and above, do they care? The IT department probably cares. The application owner cares if the performance, resiliency, and reliability are there. But do they need to care about the nuts and bolts? Do you need to rebuild this stack every time you go through that refresh cycle? Probably not. So what you can do is start taking the foundation, kind of start going into infrastructure as a service. Now, from an app owner's perspective, they don't care. You just tell them, we can run VMware, here's our SLAs, here's our reliability, here's our RTO, here's our RPOs, here's what you need, and here's our tiers. Very easy to build those out, and they can pick and choose what they want based on cost back or whatever you want to do. But it's simply kind of building that foundation from the pizza dough, the sauce, the toppings, and the cheese, and then you take it and you kind of build the rest. Platform as a service is popular with people who do their own development, which is becoming more and more popular. A lot of my customers still do off-the-shelf applications, but we're seeing more and more people leverage this, especially to start looking at big data. Big data is yet another one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around. But especially in state and local government, there's a ton of information that can be used to get really useful data out of. And to do that, they often have to build their own environments, say Hadoop or something like that. Do you want to be in the business of building your own Hadoop cluster and managing it? Probably not. Not when you can go to someone like a Pivotal or something like that that has it built you put your app and your data on top of it, let them manage the underlying architecture. And that's your platform as a service. You basically show up, pizza comes to your house, all you have to provide is something to drink if you don't order it, and the table. And then software as a service, which most people are familiar with because we've all been using it for years. Office 365, Salesforce.com, which could be platform as well as software. You know, Simplicity, I was trying to think of the file system, Sync Tool, Gmail that I use for my email, all those tools. And so what you have to realize is one of these does not solve all your problems. You have to look and see what's the right, most economical place to run your existing applications, or to look at migrating to another set of applications. And to show you how to manage that, let me show a little bit of that. This is how we built our cloud. You don't need every box up there. Jerry from EMC is a really nice guy, right? Thankfully, I don't have to buy everything that's up here for us to show a demo environment. But we like to show what the capabilities are. So in Varrow, we are an EMC partner, we're a VMware partner, we're a Cisco partner. So you see a lot of those things up there. And we built this based on the EMC's reference hybrid cloud architecture. What I like about it is a couple of things. I talk to too many people that see things like hybrid cloud as this really cool thing over there. That'll be great in a couple of years, but I don't know, let somebody else build it first and all that. EMC's built it, we have built it, customers have deployed it, in production, running workloads on it. It's not the future, it's right now. So on ours is fairly simple. On the left, we have our private cloud sitting. This right here is sitting in my office in Charlotte, right at Valentine. For storage, we've got a VMAX, we've got a VNX, Extreme.io, and Isilon. We have all the things. It's really cool. Under that, we have EMC's vPlex, kind of managing down to that virtualization layer for the hardware. And we've got, Cisco UCS for servers, and vSphere for hypervisor, and Cisco Nexus for our switching, and EMC's DPAD, which is our backup and recovery, like data domain, for example. In the middle, we have our automation stack. So you can start picking things out. You can figure out which pieces you need and which ones you don't. We like both Cisco's UCS Director, which I think is a horrible name, but a great product because it does more than UCS. We also like VMware's vCloud Automation Center, VCAC down the third row. We use EMC Viper for storage virtualization. I'll show you in the demo, as well as other management tools like VCOps, Log Insight, VMware ITVM, which I'll show you to compare your actual true cost. And we layer these things on some other things such as Platform, Pivotal, Software as a Service, Simplicity. And then we've got SDN for software-defined networking, both Cisco's ACI and VMware NSX. We do both. These days, I spend most of the time driving around having briefings with customers because they're asking me, hey, my Cisco rep won't shut up about ACI, and my VMware team won't shut up about NSX. Do I care? And if I care, which one do I care about? I spend a lot of time doing that. So this is our automation stack. Then over here on this column, kind of third one there, is our hybrid cloud. This is a set of gear that looks similar to what we have in the private cloud, but it's sitting in one of our data center providers, Peak 10. And why do I show this? Because I show that we can easily spin things up outside of our four walls, anywhere we want to. And then we can also do things in a true public cloud. So we partner with Amazon AWS, Windstream, Peak 10, and VMware's vCloud Air. So we can spin things up in one of those, show you what the cost is. Maybe you've got a development effort going on and you need to spin up 50 VMs. But you don't want to spin up 50 VMs on your private cloud because you may not have licensing or you may not have resources. But it only needs to be around for a month, so maybe you spin it up in vCloud Air. And that's the most cost-effective way. So it gives you options, gives you capabilities that you don't have with a traditional kind of data center stack. Here's a bulleted list. I've already gone through most of those. I'll put in a plug here for my lab team. They do a fantastic job. If there's anything up here you're interested in and want to see demo, we can do it in Charlotte, we can do it in Raleigh. I'll come to your place and we can do it remote. But we have a fairly sizable environment to do things like limited POCs, pilots within our lab environment, plus demo capabilities. So let me jump over to something that's not PowerPoint. So I am logged into vCloud Automation Center. sitting in our Charlotte office. This is kind of our front end. Now, I have access to do almost everything because I'm an admin in the system. You could have a developer log in and get a subset of what you're about to see. You could have an application owner log in and see a smaller subset. Maybe you want them to be able to spin up systems, VMs, application sets, whatever, and say, okay, they can do it, 2 vCPUs and 8 gig of RAM and 500 gig of storage. If they go above any of those, it's got to come to me for authorization or go to someone for authorization. You can have it tie into third-party ticketing systems, Remedy, things like that. ServiceNow is another one we're doing a lot of work with, and tie those pieces in. One thing that I wish I had to show you today, but we're still finishing up integration, is backup. Capability for someone who owns a set of virtual machines to go in and say, when's the last time this thing was backed up? I broke something. Let me do a restore. And you can say restore back to what it was at 3 p.m. yesterday. Now, these types of things are great at reducing tickets. I can show true cost savings by reducing tickets, reducing change control, putting power back into designated users' hands. I'm not saying giving everybody the ability to do all this, but what you pick and choose. And they can just log in, very simple interface, and do this without different tools, different places for different functionality. So with our service catalog we've got right now, we have a lot of options here. So this is just a couple of these use cases. Now, go back to what I said at the beginning of this. Think about use cases. Because if you ask me to come in and talk about a project to do something like this, I'm going to ask you to give me 3 or 5 good, solid use cases to start with. What do we want to do? Do we need to connect to third-party things? Do we need ticketing systems? Do we need change control systems? A very popular one is onboarding and offboarding employees. Very few people I deal with do that as a very good job. I mean, they kind of get created when HR sends an email, and then sometimes they get deleted when they leave, but they don't always. Everything gets deleted. Maybe the AD account gets disabled. You know how it goes. It just goes on and on. Don't think of this just as spinning up infrastructure. Think of it as employee comes on board, HR logs into this, and there's a process. AD is created. Exchange mailboxes are created. They're added to whatever external payroll systems you need. And then when they leave, you can come in and say, undo all those things. And it rolls through. The beauty of automation is 2 things. 1, it takes the workload off of whoever's doing it. 2, it's done the same way every time. And I'll show this in an example a little later when we create a data store for VMware. The problems I run into, most of the problems that come up that require troubleshooting, come down to I do things one way, the Rich Dexter over there does things a completely different way. The end result is the same. The end result is VMware has storage. How I did it, how he does it, may be different. And sometimes that's going to bite you. So a lot of these things are just about standardization. So we've got things here like assign Horizon View Desktop to a user. You've got a user, you want to give them View Desktop, we can do that. Create a user account, create Viper, these get cut off, but like create Viper snapshots. I can spin up a Windows system in Amazon AWS, provision data stores, spin up a Pivotal instance, scroll down, create Windows 2000 R2, 2008 R2 server in our private cloud, do it in our hybrid cloud at peak 10, on and on and on. And these are just the first couple of these things that we've done. A few other things. The way you do these is pretty simple. You want to spin up a 2008 R2 instance, you click on it, and all it's going to do is ask you for some details. If my Horizon Desktop is working, there we go. And it tells you a few things. Here's the sizing that you're allowed to do. If you go above that, I'm going to require authorization from somebody. It tells you what it costs, how long your release time is. We do 2 days because this is a lab. If we never go back and delete anything. So we do it 2 days and it kills it. How many people know how long their VMs have been around? How do you know when their life is they need to be end of life? To pull back licenses, to pull back resources. If you're just spinning up VMs out of templates and not tracking that, I can't tell you how many times I've gone into customers, looked at their environments when they were getting low on resources, and we found a bunch of VMs that we can reclaim back. All of a sudden, they don't need to buy blazing licenses. Salespeople aren't real happy, but I want you to get the most for your money, so I don't mind. But you can just go in and request and do this. And all of these settings that will pop up, it's going to ask me to log in because I timed that. All these settings that we set under the, there it goes, are just, they're involved in what's called a blueprint. Well, we define the blueprint to be whatever we want. It could be 1 VM, it could be 5 VMs, it could be a whole app instance. It could be the VMs, the OS, and the app stack on top of it. We could spin 3 of them up in, 3 of them up in Peak 10, 2 of them up in AWS. You decide. We build these things out, you build them out, whoever you want to do it. But you can go through, and then as you change these, it will tell you what that costs, what it costs to run per day, per month, or per year. You may not do chargeback. Most people don't. I talk to people all the time, like, man, we don't do chargeback. Everybody else does chargeback. Nobody does chargeback. The only place I've ever seen was when I was at the banks. And they used numbers that they completely made up out of thin air that had no relevance to reality. But we're starting to see more and more people want to do this. Log back in. And what we can show you is how you feed this information in, how you see what it actually costs. And then we can do things as interesting as, we can compare it to AWS, to Azure, to vCloud Air, real time. I can come in and say, you're running 500 VMs. It's costing you $43,000 a month to run these VMs. We feed it in your infrastructure costs, your data center space costs, your power, your cooling, what your people cost. And then we can say, okay, it's $43,000 a month to run this in your data center. It's $38,000 to run it in Azure. It's $41,000 to do it in AWS. And if tomorrow, when Azure and AWS change their pricing models like they like to do on a monthly basis, it will show you in real time. What we find most of the time, I'll keep talking while I jump on different network, is that most of the time, private cloud is actually cheaper than the public cloud. A lot of people think that the public cloud is cheaper. They are not. But we can show you those things. And so when somebody, and usually the case is, I get asked to come in and talk to the CIO because they're like, we need to go to cloud. A lot of people are doing this. Why aren't we doing this? And we'll do true cost analysis and say it doesn't make sense. We give you the power to be able to do those things. So if somebody says, we're spending this app up, why aren't we doing it in Amazon? My peers, I was at a conference, they're doing it in Amazon. You can say, look, it cost us $5,000 a month to run this. It's going to be $7,500 a month to run it in Amazon. It doesn't make sense. Your peers probably aren't doing true cost modeling, or your peers are just not as efficient as we are. And a lot of times that's the case. Efficiencies vary greatly. Any questions while I jump onto the networking? Is anybody looking at these sorts of initiatives to go forward with, to look at moving over to a cloud-based model? There's a lot of people in this room for nobody to say that. Yes. Okay. What's driving you toward that direction?
Not necessarily a cost issue, but more of a maintenance issue.
What do you mean by that?
Updating the software.
Okay.
Backing up of the data, general, between the operating system updates, the actual updated software.
So when you're looking at doing that, that tends to be like an infrastructure as a service opportunity. You're not worried about what's underneath that thing anymore. And that's very popular. Have you looked at any ways to kind of solve that in-house?
Yes.
Such as? Put you on the spot. I'm on the spot. I'm trying to get reconnected. I'm putting you on the spot.
we look at the number of cycles that the software goes through in terms of maintenance, how many upgrades they do, how often they do it, what it takes us in terms of an effort to vet the software out before we go from development or testing into production. It only makes sense so far on our bigger applications.
Yep. And that's fine. And it's fine because you find that people, you tier things. Some things you can keep in-house. It's lower cost to do that. Some things you move out because it makes more sense. You don't worry about maintenance. You don't worry about other outages. And it's worth paying a bit more to move that out. Right. And I love this screen. This is a live screen. This is not a preset thing. This changes. As I spin up VMs, 2 hours ago, that number, the 253, was different because one of my other guys was also doing a demo. And so we fed it information. You can see cost drivers down there. Storage, OS licensing, which is always a huge number if you're a Microsoft shop. And that's not dinging Microsoft, it's just life that it is. Maintenance, all that stuff. You can get as detailed as you want to. Cost analysis scares people. We can do it as simply as, this is what's called ITVM. It's a product from VMware that works really well. This is a standard edition, meaning we feed it simple base numbers. What do we pay per terabyte per disk? What do we pay per network? What do we pay for our servers? rough consolidation ratios. The advanced versions can tie into your accounting systems. So they know exactly how much your employees cost. They know exactly what this month's electricity bill is for the data center. Really detailed. Most people don't get that detail. But with this, I can tell you that it costs me in my lab $57 per month on average to run a VM, 253 VMs. We can then drill down. We can look at other things such as what's my hardware cost, storage cost, licensing cost. Where is that trending? Is it trending up or is it trending down? Hopefully it's trending down. But you can break these things out. Operational analysis. What's your cost for CPU, for RAM, for storage, and again, the OS licensing. The one that's really cool is you can compare what it costs you. Now this right here is a comparison of what it would cost me to run 10 medium-sized VMs in the different environments. There is an option here that I set up earlier, but I deleted. You can say, show me my existing environment in comparison. It has to pull in some more data, so I took that down a little bit. But this is live. I was sitting in a room yesterday, and we watched this thing refresh, and the numbers changed. So it uses the APIs from Azure, from AWS. Anybody else should plug in. Now, obviously, I lied a little bit, and I'm showing a huge difference in cost. But 90% of the time, it's cheaper to run things in a private environment, assuming you'll need some of the capabilities in a public environment. But this gives you what you need to know to figure out where's the best place to do what we're doing. Where's the best place to host these applications? Why would we want to spend them on other places? And it shows you that right here. And you can see this anytime. You can go in and break this down. When you go and do compare existing, you can actually go in and import VMs or systems from specific sets. So if you want to know, is it cheaper to run this application than these 40 VMs, here, there, or where, you can do that at a grouping level. Very, very powerful. The other things that we can do, we can show you, the other points of automation are that we can show you things like, I've got a VM spun up in AWS. Not a point of automation, point of self-service. Here's my demo system. It's so far since I spun it up yesterday, it's cost me $7.57 to run that in Amazon. It tells you on the fly how much. But the cool thing is, I did that off my service catalog. I spun that VM up in AWS the same way I spin a VM up in my VMware environment. No different. Just ran the blueprint, off it goes, up it came in about 5 minutes. We can also do things like standard IT as a service functions. Do we want to provision a VMFS data store? To do this, we integrate a tool from EMC called Viper. Viper is really neat. What it does is it takes all of your existing physical storage and creates virtual arrays. And very simply, it says this. You create like a tier 1 array, might be all flash, Extreme IO, something like that, maybe VMAX. I'm an EMC guy speaking EMC terms. Tier 2, maybe a VNX, something like that. Tier 3, Isilon. And you just go through and say, I want to provision storage. And you just tell it kind of the tier that you want to do. Not actually that to do one. I'll show you what it does. You tell it the cluster, the name, the version, and then you give it a virtual appliance name. Type all this stuff in. But you take like your tier 2 arrays, put them in, and creates a virtual array. So do you care which VNX it lives on? Or do you care that the workload is distributed evenly and that it's monitored? Most people don't really care. If you have multiple arrays, distribute the workload, let it carve up the disk, stop getting in the business of building these things independently every time. And you can go through and have it create that. What you get out of it is something like this. This is a log from a data store creation. I don't create a data store every time I do a demo right for $1,000. But it creates a file system. What's important is if you look down on the left side, pre-check steps and execution steps. What is it? 8 and 10. So it does 18 steps. I guarantee you that if I were to sit down and create an NFS data store, I wouldn't do 18 different things. I would not do the pre-checks that it does to make sure things are available that are there. I wouldn't do the checks it does later to make sure that NFS data store actually showed up on every host. I would just assume since it wasn't last time, I'd probably use it. And then all of a sudden, VMs no longer go to this one host because for whatever reason he's not talking into us. So the idea here is to standardize the way we do things. This is the Viper console. I'll illustrate the Viper look at the work log. But you can see all the things that it does. It lists out all the pre-check steps and the execution steps. But the idea again is think about how many of these tasks get done all the time. Think about how you want to standardize all these operations. And then the last thing that people usually ask about is around how do you monitor and manage this thing. So I'm a big fan of vCenter Operations Manager. This is a scary graph, but don't let it scare you. We built this. This is monitoring our Nexus 9000 environment in the lab. We actually wrote this adapter to pull all of our stats. We've also got one for the Viper side. I wouldn't expect most people to look at this. I would look at this every day. But what you get out of it is that we can correlate things and track them. We can track, is the Nexus performing? Is there a bottleneck? Is Viper having an issue as it deploys? This is the Viper performance dashboard. Is it performing adequately? Is our Extreme IO performing adequately? The answer to that's all yes. But we can monitor that. And the cool thing is we can tie this into other systems. So if there is a problem, we can do root cause analysis. We're feeding this thing data out of this cloud environment. We're feeding it the network, from the storage, from the compute, from the applications themselves. We're feeding it information from logging tools such as Log Insight from VMware, which also works with vCenter Operations. So when there is a problem, you can go back and see what was different when this happened. Was something throwing an alarm? Is the latency due to the storage array, or is the latency due to the storage fabric? And you can correlate that on a timeline and see those things. And that's usually the problem is that people will look at this and think, that is fantastic. I love it. What happens when it breaks? I want to troubleshoot it. And these are tools that are out there right now, nothing too crazy. Probably already, a lot of you are already running vCenter Ops. You should be running Log Insight. But these are tools that you integrate in, monitor this, and understand what is going on in the end, not pieces and not parts. So I'm starting to get low on time. Do we have any questions? Thank you for your patience while we got back to the lab. Any questions? So right now, Viper works with about everything EMC as well as other third parties. And that's what's neat about it. If you're a NetApp shop, for example, have Viper manage that as well. Use that as a different tier of storage. Viper, I like, and I know you're plugging it, but I like it because it's the only thing that does what it does. It's a piece of software that stays out of the data path, so it doesn't impact performance or reliability. But it's going to be that thing that all of your systems go to when they need storage. So no matter what your automation platform is, DCAC or whatever, it can go work with that and say, I need a terabyte of disk on tier 2 storage because I need this performance level, this, this level of response time, this level of replication. Give me some of that, tell me where it is, and it figures that out. Some people, they get worried. I don't know if I want to do that. But we're at the point in storage these days where we're no longer turning those knobs and those dials. When we get to things like all-flash arrays and true hybrid arrays, we no longer turn knobs and dials. We just tell the arrays, I need 5 milliseconds or better response time, I need async replication with no more than a 10-minute RPO, and I need block level connectivity. Okay, here you go. I'll worry about how I satisfy it. And that's why we use things like Viper. Other questions?
Jason, I'm providing the supervisor. Question, you talked about this house breakdown.
Yep.
Varrow will come out. I'm assuming Varrow will come out at the end.
Yep.
How long would an engagement like that typically take about?
Scope services.
And
It honestly depends. I know everybody answers every question like that, but it depends. But it depends on how deep you want to go. If you just want us to look back over the last 3 years and figure out what you pay per terabyte of disk, for servers, things like that, I don't know. Don't hold me to this. 2 to 3 weeks, something like that, maybe. If you want to get really detailed, it can go a lot longer. We've got customers that want us to do full end-to-end from the apps all the way through down to facilities. That is significantly longer. But it can be fairly simple, especially when we do ITVM standard, which is what this is. We're not going to spend 6-8 weeks out there doing cost analysis because that's not worth it to do this level. We usually do that fairly quickly.
So this was a hybrid cloud demo, and I don't know if I have a question, but I'm just trying to make sure.
Go ahead, talk through it.
So what I heard at the beginning was really the deal is we need to figure out how to do apples to apples comparisons.
Yep.
And what your, the value that you're selling here or showing is a way that, whatever, I mean, or what you're showing is something that helps us understand our apples in very quantitative ways that, you know, I can easily compare it to these other things and therefore show, you know, the return, the value of our IT investment and our operations and, yeah.
I wish I'd said that at the beginning, but yes. That's kind of the idea, is that IT to me has always looked, it's kind of gotten a black eye because it's always looked at as a black hole, right? We put money into it, what do we get back out of it? Yeah, my phone's ring, yeah, I get email. Nobody thinks about the other stuff that IT does. And then when you push back and say, hey, you're bringing in a new whatever system, it's going to cost us X amount. Well, what do you mean? You know, we already spent $1 million on this stuff over the last 5 years. Yeah, that's great, and it's got us to where we're at today. But the idea is to show, A, what it costs to run, what it's going to cost in the future, and then make you more agile when those kind of requests come in. That's kind of the purpose of this, is to be a bit more agile, actually be a lot more agile.
We struggle with this because your members and your executive team are seeing open cloud where you've got Microsoft coming at you and sending their sales reps to sell you all cloud services, nothing on-prem. And it almost feels like corporate companies I just went to, they're not going to even offer premise-based stuff much longer for exchange.
They're not.
Is what they're saying, and there's a big revolt about that going on in the user community, the enforcement of the cloud. But we end up having to hire somebody to come in and do a lot of what it looks like the school does.
Yep.
Which that's in the school. But it actually, we were forced to, because contractor telling you you're not good for the cloud right now, there's a lot more weight than your own people.
It does.
Yeah. But we found the same thing. The costing was cheaper in-house than anything in cloud. We maintained the security, we maintained more flexibility. We had top of the line, Gartner fourth, the upper quadrant.
Magic quadrant,
tools.
yes.
We had all the tools that were up there. If we look at something like Office 365, we took their email. We took their email description. We took their email. So, to me, if this works as easy as it does, I've got high interest in being able to defend myself in my own IT show.
I hate to use the word defend, but you're right. I use it all the time. You're absolutely right. And the first time I did a true cost analysis was, I don't know, 2-3 years ago for our internal Varrow kickoff. You know, everybody was asking us the same thing. Our customers would come to us and say, we want to move data. Yes, what does that really cost? So I broke down. I spent a lot of time going through the numbers, and I found the same thing. You have to look at the fact there's a lot of sunk costs in most data centers. If you start, if I was a startup in Silicon Valley, I wouldn't build a data center. As quick as they grow, as fast as they go, I wouldn't do it. But most established organizations already either have a sunk cost or it's a longer term thing. It's not a 1 year, 2 year scale up. It's we're going to be in business for a long time. Let's build the infrastructure where it's cheaper. Being here, talking to government agencies, you're under different rules and requirements than a lot of my commercial customers are. But I'm going to tell you right now, don't believe the hype that all these commercial guys will flee to the cloud as fast as they can. They're not doing it. They're not doing it for a myriad of reasons. Cost being one, control being the other. They still have regulatory compliance. And honestly, there's still a lot of services out there that just aren't as good. Now, the people that I do have doing it, they're doing a lot of in-house development. They love to go to AWS. They love to go to things like Pivotal Cloud Foundry because one is the IT staff doesn't really get in the way of the development team. The development team doesn't want to hassle them. And it's just quicker to go up there and spin these things up. That's where it is taking off. But for day-to-day workloads, I mean, honestly, to move a VM up or even an application up into some other public cloud and run it 24/7, 365, that kicker just keeps going. If you spin stuff up, the old classic cloud bursting model. It's Christmas. We have to spin a bunch of things up. Then we're going to shut it down in January. If you're one of that 0.1%, that's fantastic. But most people, they run the same stuff 24/7. They run all sorts of different off-the-shelf applications that they can't just turn over to software as a service or something else. And it's just not as quick of a jump as you would believe from the hype.
We typically have time to react. I I don't need to throw up 20 DMs
Correct.
tomorrow morning. And so you have that time frame to react, and if you have, if you deploy cloud technologies, and you're doing virtualization, you're doing all these things from storage, you can react in the time you don't have anyway.
That's right. And there's other things to speed this up, so I know I'm like out of time. But, you know, when I was at the bank, it used to take, I was in an investment bank. In an investment bank, when we would create a new product to make money, we would make money for about 6 months. And then the other investment bank would kind of catch on to what we were doing, build form products, and our profitability would go down. So the goal was to get things up as fast as we could. Back then, we were pushing an initiative called provision first. Simply it meant spin things up in VMware to get our developers working while we order equipment. Now they don't order equipment, everything's virtual. But you know, the last pieces of that are things like security, network, and that's where NSX-ACI software-defined networking comes into play. It's very easy to build these blueprints and spin up virtual machines and application stacks and customization. And then the hindrance is usually, it's got to go through security processes, the change controls, you know, firewall rules, things like that. We can tag those in. You know, we're doing a lot of work with, say, Palo Alto and NSX integration, so that all VMs named like this are in that folder, get routed through Palo Alto devices for 7-layer firewalling, or automatically do F5 load balancing rules. You can automate these things end to end now. And the great thing is, once you approve kind of a working configuration and set, you don't have to go get them approved every single time. You're good, you know, it's a gold standard, we go forward.
Now, I do have specific questions. One is, does this work in both directions? I think I heard you say that I can then, you know, sort of flip this around and use it to provision a lot of this stuff.
Yep.
And monitor it. And two, what recurring cost is, I mean, you know, it's nice to look at a number, but it's a whole lot better if it's right. And what does it take to keep feeding this beast and, you know, and making sure, you know, all our information is accurate now and continues to be?
For what most people do, honestly, is if they're on a refresh cycle, if you refresh your storage, you got to feed this thing new numbers. If you add more blades to your, you know, server environment, you have to feed that in. It's not an everyday thing. It's you're going to know that there's an event of change, and that's what you feed into.
How do you get information compared to Amazon and all those other tools?
So we feed in information into the tool for private cloud, and then for Amazon and Azure, it goes in ASA. I mean, they publish their prices, they're available automated fashions because, you know, there are people that do spot pricing and things like that for Amazon and on the fly move stuff up and back. So they expose all their pricing to API. This thing every day goes out and make sure it's accurate. If you got any more questions, I won't be hanging out a while. I'll be downstairs at the Varrow table. But thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Anything else I can do?
Take our way with it. For example, we've got the C drive, then we got the year, whatever. So what we do is create a body that is laser fish, drive again, customize that out to another piece there, and create the inside that. So, you know, we have like general space for the C drive they were using. And you go, I want to add the E drive on the grid. So you want to